Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're Masechtas Gittin Daf Lamed Tes. We're going to begin on Lamed Tes about 6 lines from the top, Lema Ketanoi. So we've been discussing a situation where a person is makdish his eved. Now we know that a person cannot simply be makdish your eved as a carbon. So the question is, what was his intention? Now, according to one opinion, his intention is to let him go free as a member of Klal Yisrael. And therefore, when he said Hamakdish Avdo, he really was saying that you're now part of Am Kadosh. You're part of a holy nation. Alternatively, maybe he still wants him to remain as an Eved. And what he was doing was he was, of course, not representing him as a carbon, but with the may for his value, and therefore he would still be your Eved. So this was the discussion that we had in yesterday's daf, and lemeke tanoi. So maybe again it's a machlokas among tanoim. Hamakdish abdo. So again, a person does, as we said, ein mo'alin bo. So according to one opinion, there's no din me'ila, which apparently means it doesn't work. There is me'ila if you use his hair. So my lab bahal kamifgi. The marsav kaddish, marsav kaddish. So it must be that again, if there's no din me'ila, it must be that you weren't really makdish l'dama, and therefore you were just sending him free. But tizbra hay mu'alin bo vein mu'alin bo hay kaddish in kaddish meboile. If it's the same machlokas tanoim, then why are we using the language of is there an isser me'ila? Just since you said you should pashut say, is there a din of hektish? Is he kaddish? Ella de kolyama kaddish. Really, everyone holds that he in fact is kaddish, and therefore, since there is a din kedusha, therefore he is still your slave. And again, you had the intention of l'dameh. So then, what are they arguing about? V'halcha b'ma'askin and marsavar abda k'mekarkoi dami, marsavar k'metaltoi dami. There's a machlokus whether or not an eved is comparable to more like land, or he has more of a din like metalton. So that is the question. And Rashi says, "Ein mil b'karkos." So just like truma, it has to be detached. So therefore, the only isser me'ila is if something which is detached. So therefore, if in fact we consider an eved like karka, so therefore the din is that he has, if he's considered to be like karka, so then the din is that he is not going to be kaddish. So that's how we're going to answer this. Marsavar abdi kimakar koidami, or marsavar kimataltoi dami. It has nothing to do with this machlokas tanoi. Okay, so on this the Gemara continues and says, well, let's understand this a little bit better. If that in fact is the whole machlokas, ihachi adamifli b'sa'aro, why are they arguing about hair? Lifagu b'gufo, talk about him himself. Everyone holds that Eved is like karka, and therefore, because of that, there's no din kedusha on his guf. However, the question is, how about his hair? Over here, we have the question when it comes to hair, in which is oimid ligzois, which is eventually going to be cut off. Is it considered like it's already cut off, even though his hair is still attached to his head? Is that his hair, you're about to get your hair cut, is it considered mechuber? Is it attached to your body, or is it considered tolish because it's going to be cut off anyway? And therefore, then there would be a din me'il on his hair. Marsa goes dam, marsa goes dam. And therefore, that's what we're going to say. The whole machlokas maskana is that. Question 9. Hamatish avdo in mu'alin bo mu'alin b'sa'aro b'may k'mifgi, whether or not hair, let's just read what he says, question 9, b'sar ha'omid ligazes. Marsa v'kigazes dami v'harim ataltlin. Marsa v'lav kigazes v'kigufo, who is like his body, the avi k'makarkoi dami, and an eved has the same din as land. Okay, so lemehadika tonight. Kahani tonight. Maybe it's in fact like this machlokas tonight. Okay, so on Ditnan we learn, it says there's certain things in which they're like land, which means they're considered like mechuber, attached to the ground. The ein kikarka, but yet sometimes they're not. It says Rashi the kaimel and ein nishboin el karkos. We know we don't make a shmua on land. Val gafanim halolu, and on grapevines nishboin b'hoidam mixas ataina. So the question is, when it comes to grapevines, is that considered to be mechuber or talish? Is it considered to be like part of the ground, if you will? Vein chachamim moidin loy. The chachamim disagrees. Okay, tzad. Eser gafanim te'unais masartilach. So I say that there was 10 grapes. They were filled grapes that I gave over to you in order for you to watch over my land, and there was 10 grapevines there. You said there was only 5. So now normally there's a din deraisa moed b'mixus, that if you admit to half, there's a shvua deraisa that needs to be made. But again, do you make a shvua in this case? Because karka, you don't make a shvua. So Rameir says you're chayiv, apparently because it's not like ground. Anything attached to the ground is like ground. That we're talking not just about grapes that are growing, but they're literally moments before being harvested. They're ready to be detached anyway. So the question is it really considered to be connected to the ground? Because you're about to cut them off anyway, just like the hair. Drameir Savar, he holds kibbutz cyrus damin. It's like you already removed them, so you already cut them off. Rabbanan Savi love kibbutz sodas damin. So what we want to do is we want to compare the case of the nazir's hair to the grapes on the ground. So I feel tame Rameir. Ad kan look at Rameir hasam. Maybe the only time Rameir said his din regarding these grapes, that you're chayiv to make a shvua that the grapes are considered to be attached to the ground, is only when it comes to the grapes. Because if you keep those grapes there long, then they're going to get spoiled. So you really want to cut them off. By hair, the longer the hair gets, the better, right? Have nice long hair. It doesn't get worse because your hair is longer. So therefore, maybe he doesn't say that. So Ki Salk Rav Chia bar Rav Yosef, Omer L'Hai Shmaisa, the Rav said over the sugya, the Rav committed Rav Yochanan, Omer Rav Hochi, the Rav really say such a din? Did he really say such a thing? Says Rashi, Bitmiya. He didn't say this. We see clearly Rabbi Yochanan, the key words here, said the following: when a person takes his eved and he says, "You're ownerless," so in that situation, certainly he goes free because he no longer owns him. But not only that, the sarach gets shichur. There is a requirement. In order to be able to have him completely freed, you have to give him a get shichur. Says Rashi, Uparach Hashas v'I Rav Yochanan miloi Amar Hachi Uma Matama the Rav. So Hachi Kamerlei. So he said like this: Amar Rav Kivasi. Well, basically saying, does Rav hold like me? V'Ikadi Amri Lo Seamuha Kamei. Some say this matter of Rav was not completely said over, and therefore that's the reason for this statement not being completed. Didn't Rav say you need to also, even your mafkir, your eved, you have to also write a document to free him? So in fact, yes, Rabbi Yochanan holds exactly like this shita, that even though you freed him, of course, you're mafkir, he's hefker, so he goes free, but you still need to write a get shechur for him. Gufa. So again, you have to write this document. Is that really true? So Rav Abba asks L'ula, Ger Shemes. You have a convert who died, and Rashi explains, not only that, he has no yarshim. There's no one to inherit his things, which means the second he dies, everything he has becomes hefker. Uvizvazu Yisrael nechasav, and the Yisraelim started like plundering and taking his things because they're hefker. V'hoya behem avadim, and among the things that this ger had who died, he had slaves. Ben gadol and ben katanim kanu atzman b'nei chayrin. So the din is that they go free. Why? Because hein kaidim l'chol adam lahachzek ba'atzman a hefker. Since they're considered like hefker, so they're able to acquire themselves, even the small ones, and they all go free. Because as soon as he died, it's ki'u like they were hefker, and therefore they're kaidim themselves immediately. And therefore they go free. Abba Shol Aymer no. Gedolim kanu atzma. A gadol who is shaykh to make a kinyan, so they're in fact, they go free. Therefore they're b'nei chayrin. Katanim kol max behen zochem hen. Because katanim don't have the schus to be kind of something, so therefore because of that, they don't go free. Now the question is, v'chi mi kasav get shichrul elu? Says Rashi, miyato hatim b'Yisraelos harimesu ba'alim. Okay, I understand that you freed him because of hefker, so therefore because of that, the din is that he doesn't have any owners. But the question is, but if you still have to write you need to have a shtar shechor. The shtar shechor is going to allow him to be able to be completely free to be able to marry Yisraelis. But who did that? So l'chayra, this may be a raya that you don't need to write a shtar shechor, and he can marry a Yisraelis even if the master who freed him didn't, or was mafker him, didn't write a shtar shechor. And this has to be the case because the ger just died. He didn't free him that way. He just died. So therefore, how is it shaykh to say that the gedolim are able to go free and l'chayr even marry Yisraelis? So Omer damei hai midrabanan kadoligami inchi shmaisa. These rabbanan, it seems like they didn't really understand the sugya so well. But time of Rav Nachman ksaver ula avdai de ger ki ishta. The din of an eved who was, his master was a convert, has the same din as a woman in general. Ma ishto mishtachabul get. Just like a woman, when her husband dies, she doesn't need a get. Her husband died, and now she can marry someone else. So avada mishtalchin b'lo get. So too when it comes to an eved, the din is that when your master dies, there's a difference between you're an eved, and you're sold, or he frees you. But over here, since the ger died, so it's just like a husband who died. So a husband who died, the wife goes free, and that's it. Not free. She's not married anymore. So she can marry someone else. So too, this man is completely free, and now he can marry Yisraelis. Yehachi, if you want to compare this eved to an isha, so a fil Yisrael nami. So we should say, says Rashi, that should also apply to a Yisrael who owns an eved who died in that situation. Yisrael shemes nami lo yisku banav. His children should not inherit the servants, the haki ishtohem. If you want to say that an eved is like a woman, that if the master dies, that they go completely free and can even remarry and can marry Yisraelis, so then even if, why do we have to say it's a case of a ger who has no yorshim? Let's say you're talking about a yid who does have yorshim. It doesn't have to say ihachi afil Yisrael nami. It means even, of course, a ger is a Yisrael, but it just means someone who's Jewish who has yorshim. But we know that when it comes to a Jew who has yorshim, so they will be kind of the eved because they acquire whatever the father owns. So Amar Kra, on that the pasuk says, if Yisrael dies, the eved goes free only with a shtar shechor. Otherwise, the yorshim inherit him. So in that situation, you would need a shtar shechor. There's no question. And if the man, let's say the father, didn't write a shtar shechor, and then he dies, so then the children inherit them. But over here, we're talking about where there are no heirs. So Yehachi hamafker abdo. Let's say a person frees his servant umes, and the master dies. Nami. The fact is that since he died afterwards, that should also allow that he should be able to marry Yisraelis. But this very situation, also Eben ein lo takana, he has no remedy. So the Amemer Kasha. So on Amemer attack, it's a question, because you should say that once the master died, so then he should be able to also marry Yisraelis. But according to Amemer, he's saying that this person's like in a status of limbo. You're free, so now you can't be married to a Shech Kanaanis, but you can't marry Yisraelis because you didn't get a Shtar Shecher. Amar Rav Yaakov bar Idi, Amar Rav Yeshua ben Levi, halacha k'Abashol. The halacha, in fact, is like Abashol, that says that Gedolim, in the case of a ger, adult Eved is free because they're kind of themselves, but not Katana. That is the halacha as it's stated here. Amalei Rav Zeo, Rav Yaakov bar Idi, as we continue to Lamed Testament Beis, Beferish explicitly Shamia Loch or Machlol Shmia Loch. The fact, was it explicitly heard from your Yeshua and Levi, or was it some type of way that you deduced it? So my klol of the Yom Yeshua and Levi, what was the general rule? Amru, with Ne Rebbe, Amar, in front of Rebbe, he said, Nisiyayishti mepleni avdi. If a person says, I've given up all hope of ever finding my Eved, or as Rashi just explains, not that he's lost, but Loshen Hefkerhu. When you're miyayish, when you give up hope, you're basically saying it's ownerless. So the question is, Mahu, what is the din in that situation? Is that language strong enough that he's free and therefore and that he would be able to marry Yisraelis? So Mohen Omer Ani, I say Eino Takana. In that situation, there's no remedy. He's not allowed to marry a Bas Yisrael because no shtar was written, and he no longer can be with a Shimcha because he was freed a little bit. So it's like the status of limbo. So therefore, Eino Takana El B'Shtar. Again, he needs a shtar shichor to be able to marry Yisraelis. Why does Rabbi require it? So he learns out from a woman, from a wife. So when the woman, if let's say her husband just wants her to marry someone else, and the husband's alive, he has to give her a get. So to over here, if the Eved is your miyayish and your wife, but you're alive, you have to give her a get, whatever yish would mean in that case. So it's the same thing over here. The Eved still needs a get shecher. And we can make an inference from here, says Rashi, Kivan de Rabbi Meisha Yolef, since he learns out from a woman, Lo Iri Rabbi Ela B'mafkir Eved Gadol. It must be talking about an adult. Sheish Lo Yad Litnois Atzmo, someone who's able to acquire things. So therefore, B'kad Daik Minak Isha, my Isha Isura V'lo Mamoina. So just like when it comes to a woman, we're dealing with Isser and not monetary issues, says Rashi. Shemafkiru eno alav el Isser. Avalo mamon ki isha zu sheget shalah eno bol hafkia mamon sheishaleha el Isser. We know a get has nothing to do with any monetary issues. That's the ksuba and other things. It has nothing to do with a get. A get has to do with Isser. So af eved nami isura b'lo mamoina. So too, when it comes to the Eved, it's talking about Isser, has nothing to do with money. So therefore, that is the diak. And it says Rashi, Avol be'eved, let's continue this Rashi. Avol be'eved katan, lo iri Rebbe. Rebbe's not talking about an Eved who's a little kid. Dolav domidi ishahu, it's not comparable to a woman. Diika deror de mamoinale, because there's also deror de mamoina, because a person he still has value because you could acquire him. Says Rashi, "V'didei svirule dieshlo takana b'shimcha delo kana atzma behefker v'lo mumah." So if you want to talk and tell me it's through some deduction that the question. So it says Rashi, beferish o machlolo amalei ad Rabbi doik mino idach gisa. So he made a diak on the other side. Ma isha ben gadol ben katana av eved nami ben gadol ben katan. You can actually say it the other way around. So it's not necessarily beferish, because maybe you could say, well, just like a woman, we know that there's a get. It doesn't matter if she's young or an adult, right? She's still mutter with a get. So too, when you're mafkir eved, also it could be referring to a katan also, just like a woman. So therefore, you can look at it that way as well. So he said explicitly, it was heard to me. Actually, halacha is not like abashol, that it's not that only the adult eved goes free, but even the katan. Again, similar dialogue over here. Was it explicit or implicit, or is it through deduction? So my chlolo, what would be the way to maybe figure it out? The Rabbi who said, the person wants to be mafkir his eved using language of yush. Again, as we said, mahu. What's the din? Does he completely go free and marry Yisrael? I say, there's no remedy except with a star. Until you write a star, this person is not allowed to marry Yisraelis. Yom Rabbi Yochanan, my time of the Rabbi. Why does Rabbi say you need a star? Because Gamar lo isha. Ma isha b'shtar, af evanami b'shtar. If you want to free your wife, you need to give her a get. So too, if you want to free your Eved to be able to marry Yisrael, he needs a star. And we made this diak isha. Ma isha ben gadol ben katana. So af evanami ben gadol ben katan. A woman, you can divorce a woman. Doesn't matter if it's an adult or a woman who could be married as a katana. Also, she's divorced. So too, when it comes to an eved, even a katan will be removed. So if you're telling me it's, as we said, it's inference, what do you mean? It sounds pretty explicit. Because maybe you could say the other way around. It's not necessarily explicit. Because Adarabba, Daik Minol Haki, so you can look at it the other way. Maybe it's only talking about a gadol, because by a gadol, when it comes to a woman, the get is only isser, has nothing to do with money. So too, when it comes to an eved, it's when it's only isser and not money, as opposed to a katan. So it was actually explicitly said to me. There's no takana, you need to give him a star shechar. He says they can even give the demei atzmo his monetary value. They can go because he's like he was sold to him. So it doesn't sound like you need a star. So what I really meant to say is that the kana of the eved could be done in either way. It doesn't have to be a star. You can actually use kesef and purchase him, and that would be he can purchase himself. More Kedushin talks about how he does that, etc. And as Rashi says, pakle kasba mi ata ino takana el b'shtar. Behind the afgare, the one who is mafgered, so the fact that no longer there's kesef involved, so therefore, because he was hefker, so since he's hefker, he's not purchasing himself because he's ownerless, so therefore in that situation you need a star. So again, in a situation where he purchased himself so that it would work, you wouldn't need a star. However, if he's being your mafker evid, you would need a star because there's no kesef involved. And that excludes the following opinion. That which we said that an evid is freed even with kesef. The sanya Rabbi Shimon Omer Mishum Rabbi Akiva Yochli He Kesef Gamerba Keder Shtar Gamerba. You would think that kesef actually would free him completely, just like a star shecher. Tamlomer v'hefte lo nifdasa. So the pasuk is telling us that regarding the padiyah, he's being redeemed and not redeemed. Ura kol parsha kula l'luchul pas. This is referring to the entire parsha where you free her with a star. So that parsha is talking about where the star was given. So we see from this pasuk that only a star is acceptable, not kesef. And if you do get redeemed with kesef, you still need a star. The halacha, in fact, is Reb Shimon that kesef cannot be gomer ba. Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama, Rabbi Yochanan, in halacha Reb Shimon, that again just kesef alone would work. Ashke Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Rabbi, he found him, who was Bar Sheilta, the Havikoi a Pischa de Beit Tefillah. He was standing by the entranceway of the Tefillah, Armali Halacha and Halacha. He wanted to know what was the din. Is the Halacha like, can you be freed with kesef alone? Armali Ani Omer Ein Halacha, I say the Halacha is not like him, Barabanan, the Asam and Mechayza Amri. They said, so I say no, they say yes. When I go to Surah, I found Rav Chia Barabin. So Amrulay, and he said, easy gufa de ubda. He explained to me exactly what the situation was. Amrulay, Dahia Masa, there was a woman, there was a maidservant who was, again, she was a slave. Dahavi Mara Shchimira, and her master was dying. So Asabachia Kameh. So she was crying. Armulay, so he said to her, Ad Mosai Mishtabid V'tezalahi Isasa. Until when are you going to continue to be enslaved? So Shakal Kumte, so he took a hat, Shadaba, and threw it toward her. Armula Zilkani ha ukani nashach. Be kaina the hat, and then you'll be kaina yourself. It looked like a nice way of freeing her, but unfortunately didn't work. So Mandachaza Savar Misham the Halach Rav Shimon. We thought maybe the Halach of Rav Shimon, that hat, which is like Shavak Kesef, that's not enough because you need still a star. So Velohi has nothing to do with what we were talking about. El Misham the Havili Kalev Shil Makna. The problem was that the Kali belonged to the Makna. So we thought, maybe with a star. The answer is no. It needed to be her hat, not the master's hat, for Kinyan Chalipin to work. So that was the issue. Rav Shmuel bar Achisoi, Rav Hamnuna Saba, Rav Yitzchak bar Ashian, Rav Huna, Rav Hamnuna, Halach Rav Shimon. The halacha is like Rav Shimon. Lohi, Ein halacha Rav Shimon. Which again, we're going to stop here. That whether or not a star is necessary when we already did some type of kinyan kesef, or in this case maybe a kinyan chalipin, so that is still up to debate. But again, according to the end, we're saying the halacha is not like Rav Shimon, that kesef will complete it. Question 10 as well as TB8. Hai is hi'amata. So there was this woman, there was this maidservant, Davi Marshchimir, who's dying. Shokul Kumta took a hat, his hat, and Shadaban threw it toward her for some type of chalib, and it didn't work. So he said, Madul lo asa klum havim min maskana. Why does it not work? So in the Havamina, we thought lo asa klum hater Yisrael, that she's not allowed to now marry Yisrael, even though she's seemingly freed, like Rav Shimon. Den misyarta el shtar. She's only going to be mutter and freed to be able to marry Yisrael only if a shtar shech was written. So he said not necessarily. The problem is the havi chalip and b'kelev shel makna, b'kaimalon to b'kelev shel koine. So it had to be that it was hers, and the fact that they used his, then it became an issue. In order to be able to do chalipin, you must be the owner of the item, and then you give over that item to the other person. So the woman needed to have something of her own to be able to give to him, and then that exchange would have caused the chalipin to have worked. Okay, let's look at one more question. TA7. Okay. Ger Shemes. So you have this convert who died, as we saw. V'hiniach avadim katanim, and he left over little kids. So it's a machlokes who are avadim. So it's a machlokes avashon rabbanon. Ikanu atzman, if they go free. Okol hakodim zach behen. These katanim, because they're kids. So mavor b'gemara shesh oifin lefarish depligi dedrasha dela la miisha. Maybe we could compare it to a woman. So do we say they go free or not? So based on that. So according to the Rabbanon, they go free because like a woman, we know a woman, she goes free with Misa Sabal when her husband dies. Even if she's the married woman is a katana, so too an Eved Katan will go free when the master dies. Abba Shol says no, Kol Kodim Zacha Behen, because when it comes to woman, Sheish Ba Isura V'lo Mamoina, the get itself is only an Isser. It doesn't have anything to do with monetary things. V'yatzas Mamisa, Abel Eved Katan Ika Gabe Gamamoina de Ein Lo Yad Lo Zachas Ba'atzmo, because he doesn't have the ability to be kind to himself. So there's also an issue of mammon over here, and therefore because of that, we will say that this Eved Katan may in fact not be able to be kind himself, and therefore anyone who comes after the Ger died will be able to be kind the Eved Katan. Adkan.